Hello, creative community and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and today we are going to do a page through review of Coyote and Crow. We are continuing our series of Not D&D and also taking a look at some uh, culturally and ethnically inspired tabletop role-playing games. And I thought we would follow from Central America, Aztec, Mayan, Incan culture from White Box, and now we're going to get into a techno-utopian future of Coyote and Crow, based around and designed by the indigenous peoples of the Americas. So let's get through the introduction. Grab your snacks and sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. If you are part of the co-hosts who are here live. Hello again. Hey, princess. Hey, what's going on? Um, this show, excuse me, is a simulcast on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. So if you find the place, join us and stop by and find out about some games that are uh, quite a bit different. Yeah, within, within the Obsidian Ring of Fire. That's so silly, but cool though. That's awesome. All right, so this is Coyote and Crow. Yeah. Oh, Obsidian Ring of Starfire. That's kind of cool. That's a nice name there. Uh, yeah. So for those who do not know, Coyote and Crow, based on the idea that these United States did not and do not exist in this techno futuristic realm. Instead, um, society and culture has existed in the place that today we call the United States, but in this realm, that never happened. An event took place, a an asteroid impact creating a mini ice age, as very large asteroid impacts would have it, and the age of exploration never happened. And so the people, and I'm going to interchange the description of the names of the people here. Now, sometimes they might call them First Nation or Indigenous or um, uh, I don't know. There's some other variations. So if you're someone who happens to be from this particular culture, yeah, I mean all of that. People who lived here before, like 99.9% of the visitors that came from other worlds. As you can see, the really cool artwork. It's got a bit of this is the cover of the book, of course, and it does have a little. I mean, there's a bit of an anime style and colorful, and the designer specifically wanted to keep that kind of look and feel to it visually, just so that it's not as dark. For me, let's see if we can get this. I'll get this to the right size here. Table of contents, of course. We'll get into the different sections here. Just want to increase the size and whatnot as we page through it. So, of course, we start, and I will be talking about many elements of the book because it's a almost 500-page book. It does have a large font to it. So if you were to get the PDF, there's quite a bit of a larger font. But as we do this, I'm going to page through here. I will explain different elements of the game as well, kind of fast forwarding us through it. Of course, we have ourselves some information, lore, a story element to tell us about the history of the world and why it's called Coyote and Crow. And it is a divine conversation happening about Coyote and Crow, and how Coyote and Crow, as spiritual guardians and guides, talk about what happened to the world. So just before the age of sail, with and these United States were discovered by an outside culture, an asteroid hit and created something known as the Awi. And the Awi was basically a mini ice age. And so, as 700 years has passed or more has passed, they are coming out of this ice age. And the player characters and the major community and city, um, Cahokia and Makasing, are the technological center of this world. And the game, the first, I would say, 50 or 60 pages of this book, um, talks about the differences between native peoples who want to play this role playing game and not native. One of the big aspects of this game is that they do point out to people to try not to think of the stereotypes, and also through the history of the game, talk about what the United States would look like if the United States had not been colonized. Yeah. They could call them by the actual tribe names, but that would be required knowing things. Also, an unfortunate issue, and the asteroid impact coincides with the destruction of and the disappearance of many indigenous peoples' histories and culture and language, and so that is the reason why today, in this techno cyber solar punk uh, game, we don't have the specificity of the knowing which knowing which tribes exist and where they're at and what the language would be. And so that's an explanation in game of the mixing of different types of terminology and histories and things of that nature. One of the when this game came out, there was some controversy. Some people got really butthurt, to be honest with you, fragile egos and whatnot, about notations relating to people who are from an indigenous culture and people who are not, and talking about how, and then there was some strange, the opposite of that, were like some strange people that were like, "Am I allowed to play this game?" All of that completely erroneous. It's so silly. This is a tabletop role playing game, cinematic version of playing indigenous peoples in a world where they were not colonized. Just like there's the cinematic version of playing a knight or a samurai or pirates or anything of that nature from any Vikings or whatever. This is the exact same thing. No, it is not restricted to who you are today, um, but it does make, like I said, the first 50 or 60 pages does go into some detail in terms of, like, please ignore really harmful stereotypes. And of course, what is a role-playing game? There's some dice that you can buy. It is a D12 dice pool system, and there's even a mobile app for it. And it does talk about, like, what would the world be like if things were not brought over here, such as horses, pigs, cattle, chickens, certain types of and even going into, like, land ownership and whatnot, and how that is looked at culturally. So, in many ways, this game is trying to teach us to unlearn a thing and then relearn a thing. Very much like yesterday when we talked about the Aztec culture, and the language and the culture feeling alien in many ways and kind of a new world to visit. This is the exact same thing. Yep, the world 700 years ago, a purple streak crossed the night sky. Many tribes at the time said that it was the Great Spirit leaving them behind, abandoning the world to its fate. In the days following, the skies filled with dark clouds, the air choked with ash, the seas frothed and raged, and so on. So, yeah, the impact created a mini ice age. I remember reviewing this before, and I kind of called it like uh, cyberpunk Wakanda. And in many ways, if you're a fan of the Black Panther like Marvel Cinematic Universe, it is kind of like that. So the Adanande was a result of the asteroid impact, and so this like purple pseudo mystical mutagenic um debris, dust, energy, spirituality has imbued various aspects of the world. And so there is a combination of technology and magic. Here to the right, we have our timeline, and to the left is Makasing. Now, if you take a look at this map, and then you were to flip it around, you would see that this is Canada to the south, in a permanent frost zone, and to the north would be going down into Mexico and into Central America, and right in the center would be what some would call the United States. But as you can see, this is upside down, and it does note that if you take a look at the map, and it does say South, Caribbean islands here to the northwest and whatnot. But yeah, this is just another way of demonstrating, like, the world might be in an uncolonized world, it might be looked at quite a bit different. And you can see how here in the to the south on this map, it does say a permanent ice zone, and so it is coming out of a mini ice age. And so the player characters here in Kohokika Koho Kohokia are like guardians, explorers, rebels, soldiers, scientists, and so much more. And boom, boom, talks about the years of development, what happened in that time, and bringing us to today. If you have a question about, is there magic and technology? Which one is it to explain the various elements of the world? The answer is yes. The people here do not believe in a separation of magic and science. They don't. There is no concept of the separation of the two. So the explanation of whether something is magical and or scientific does not exist. It is explained as it exists and explained as it doesn't exist, whether that thing is there or not. So are there computers? Yes. Could you use a computer to speak to the spirit of the dead? Sure. And there's no explanation as to why. It is either you can do it or you can't do it. um, Talks about Cahokia and the greater city of Cahokia. I mentioned that this is. Let me go to some of your comments here. I did mention that this is a solar punk game, so and a bit of a utopia, and it very much is. Roll stats. Hey, what's up? Just been catching up on some of your most recent videos there. What's going on? Say finally caught mentions finally caught a live stream. What's good, my man? I remember this game. There was a lot of drama surrounding it a while back. Yeah, yeah. There were some people, non-indigenous people, who were butthurt about it. And my opinion about that is like, listen, this is a pretty big game, and while there are some minor games that kind of embraced the indigenous peoples, this was a really large release. My thing is, they get the slow clap. They can do whatever the hell they want to. That's just my opinion. Like, if I had a choice between this game and it not existing, I'd rather have this game exist. So yeah, wow. First Nations post-apocalypse survival. Yeah, there's a little sarcasm in there, but I like it. Yeah. Yeah, I heard it got grouped in with, like, yeah, yeah. No horses and no pigs for First Nations. No tomatoes and potatoes for Europeans. Imagine that. Yeah, they do go through a period of time where you have to like unlearn a thing, and then you have to imagine, like, what would the world be like? Like, wait a minute, because those of us that already live here in the States, like, we it cattle, chickens, tomatoes, potatoes, like, we that's just a normal thing for us. And to imagine it not existing, it's like, wow. Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Namath says, I like the idea. I'm curious if they'll branch out to other cultures after respect the love of the D12. Yeah. Um, allow me to confuse you even more. Um, the D12 isn't just because it's D12s tend to be like the mistreated stepchild child of the dice of in the tabletop role playing community, but it also uses a base 12 system in world. So a a minute is broken down into 12 segments, an hour is broken into 12 segments, and a day is broken into 12 segments, as well as like weeks and months, things like that. So it is a base 12 system. Yeah, yeah. You know what? Yesterday we did, what was it? Uh, Mahuahito, a white box Aztec adventure game involving like human sacrifice to keep the gods from destroying the world. It had a pronunciation guide in there as well, and I guarantee you, I brutalized the pronunciations. This has one as well, but they do make a point of saying like, yeah, you know what? Don't don't get your feelings hurt if you do this. So this is the giant metropolitan city, and like when I mentioned solar punk, there is no industrialization that has harmed the earth. So the idea of land ownership does not exist in this world. It is a seven generation way of dealing with the environment. So, for example, for like waste disposal, they use um, biobacterial pits to destroy natural waste. There's recycling. There isn't any large corporations that have like destroyed the environment. Um, there are no there are hunting grounds for food and gathering places for so there's no industrialized sustenance. So natural waterways are kept clean. There are no farms herding animals and things. Animals are hunted freely, and then those are brought back and is part of the culture as well. So there's a bit of a pride to go out there to be a hunter, to bring food back to their larger community. Um, it's still hunting gathering, even though the population is big, and so it's different. And you're like, wait, what? um, Despite the fact there are no horses, there also are no highways. Instead, due to technological advancement by using the Adenani uh, ma- material, kind of like Wakanda in their vibranium, they did accelerate over several hundred years, very into high tech. So there are no highways, there are no rolling automobiles. So the wheel wasn't used. So there are like hovercraft and like sky bikes and things like that. So the, the greater United States nation doesn't have a highway system. Instead, they use hover vehicles and subterranean um, that same hover technology in subterranean tunnels and things of that nature. Yeah, and of course they don't they haven't strip mined away the the landscape. So where they live and move, they still have a nomadic ability to move out of the way of like weather systems and earthquakes and things like that. So whole communities will move. Um, Here we go into explaining different titles, and most player characters are going to be Soyata or Soyata, and that is basically like a title of guardianship. So the players have a lot of leeway in terms of being judge, jury, savior, executioner, designer, builder, medic. Like it's kind of all of that. And the player characters basically represent guardians. They are the knights, the samurai, the police officers, the U.S. marshals, the doctors, the engineers. It's kind of like a bit of all that. And if they don't have those skills, they have the ability to assign people who do have those skills to get things done. And so here we, and then a lot of this again is talking about the the infrastructure of the city and how it works. Think of this, for me, for my opinion, think of it like Star Trek and the Star Trek Federation, where the Federation is a utopia that many of us can't imagine. This is also a solar punk city that many of us cannot imagine, right? Um, to imagine a city of hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, living in a semi nomadic, um, groupthink, socialist, um, everyone working for the greater good type of community without land ownership might be like, wait, what? But that is the case, right? So, like for example, here we have there's a mound, burial mound, in the distance in this imagery. There are machines going to get the corn and whatnot, but these aren't necessarily farms. It's just people that have planted it, and the machines go out there and like hunt, basically hunting, gathering to get the stuff. And so if it just happens to grow in this other area, it just happens to be there, and if it's not enough, it's shared equally. And so how I look at the game, because some people have been, the game has been accused of not having any conflict, but that isn't the case, because I'm going to show you something here or highlight something here that that flies in the face of the no conflict, um, the no conflict um, idea. You see your comments. Doo-doo-doo. There we go. Yeah, I just saw your comment there, roll stats. Oops. Shai says that wasn't sarcastic. Post-apocalypse from a completely different direction is a really good idea. I can't think of it ever having been done before. Yeah, it's the idea that, so they are embracing the idea that we don't know what the world would be like if the United States was never colonized, right? And what the First Nations people would be. But to explain it away, it's like, well, how are we going to do this, right? So they're like, okay, well, maybe it was just an asteroid impact and an ice age, and so that's why a lot of the culture and the language and things like that were lost. It also is a good reason. I'm going to get into what Roll Stats is mentioning um, here, where's the conflict at? So Rolstad says, what is the primary conflict of the game? Is it political, warring nations or factions, or environmental, man versus nature? What is the hook, the storytelling and role playing hook? For, and mind you, this is a bit personal because reading through, I'm sorry, when I'm paging through, I can't see your comments here. So the main conflict is like Star Trek Federation. Um, think of it as you live in a utopia, but everything outside of it is you protecting that utopia. Also, every once in a while, there are intruders who want to disrupt that utopic balance, that utopic homeostatic nature, and it's your job to protect both in threats, internal and external. And that's how I look. That's where I look at it. So in the game, you are playing someone, individuals with a lot of influence and power to protect Cahokia and a greater nation of Makasing. So let's let me describe some things that are external. The world is coming out of an ice age. So, just as in the real world, we are uncovering more information about lost tribes here in the United States, so too are these people with high technology leaving the safety of their community to explore the world. I.e., you could do dungeon crawling and overland exploration by leaving the city, going out into the wilderness. Remember, there are no highways, there are no major corporations and industrialization. So, the minute you leave the community, it's all wilderness. And whether it is going into the deserts. Remember, United States, we've got a lot of variation in terms of um, of exploring the unknown. Yeah, yeah. Nameless Who says, okay, the Star Trek framing makes a lot of sense, especially in a solar punk setting. Exactly. So internally in the city, it's like I said, it's very utopia. Like no trash and group, education isn't done in a formal setting. It's more like mentors and group think and very extremely egalitarian, you're like, well, wait a minute. Well, where's the problem? Well, here's the problem. Externally is finding, maybe your job is to go out and find other lost peoples who have suffered through this ice age and this destruction and bringing them in. And those people may not be nice. Some of them could have literally devolved into cannibalism or worse. They are also blessed by or changed by the Adonane, which is gives people supernatural capabilities. We'll get into supernatural capabilities as well. But some other aspects, I'm gonna put this back up here. The other aspects of survival are saving people. So saving those people that have been lost out there, finding resources. Remember, this is, despite it being utopia, it is a non-industrial age culturally. So instead of exploiting the land, it's finding new resources. So finding food, water sources, clean water sources, um, uh, uh, finding land to hunt and gather, being a protector of those people that went out there to hunt and gather. That is very important, as well as the fact that outside of the city, maybe there are warring nations with the same capabilities as the player characters that are doing some dangerous things. So let's go. So let me describe some things internally. Internally, people still are people, and people are going to people, which means jealousy, crime, um, uh, 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 individuals that want power, people that want to introduce governmental legal systems that kind of reflect what we have today. There's a lot of that internal policing as well. So, like secret police or something. And you may have to stop people from organizing that want to, anarchy is a big thing. Um, uh, Idolization of individuals, basically becoming like dictatorial or whatnot. That is a big thing as well. So, and it's also, there's the what is the term, paradox. There's the paradox of tolerance. So a society cannot be completely tolerant of intolerance. So, but it is a very tolerant society, and so the player characters are the police of that. So there may be people who are brutalistic and thieving in the community that shrug their shoulders and go, "Well, you're supposed to tolerate my behavior, right?" And the player characters are like, "No, we're going to kind of beat ass on you because you deserve it." Yeah, is there actually any punk in solar punk, like using solar power to run your amplifiers for your 3 chord slop? Also, are there any police in this universe? Yeah, see, and that's where the player characters are like the if you play a character you kind of like the police enforcers enforcing like the social norms. Players are kind of like the law in a versus chaos kind of thing. Very Star Trek like. All right, so this part that I highlighted here, and we'll move on, is a bit strange, but let me read this. Violence isn't always illegal. In Cahokia, 2 or more people are allowed to engage in arranged combat, even lethal combat, so long as there is a 7-day waiting period and an agreed upon location and neutral witnesses to the agreement. This agreement isn't considered murder and isn't a crime. Because of this, violence is rarely more than a fist fight, and murder isn't a common occurrence. Most people cool off or find other solutions before anyone is killed. So, yeah, fighting to the death is possible, but there's a 7-day waiting period. And rivals to some player characters could, they could challenge someone in 7 days, hence engage in like a knife fight or something like that. For example, like there are no firearms, but there are like these gravity assisted bows and slings, um, where it's like the bow and arrow in video games that doesn't have the string, but you pull it back and it's like a gravity acceleration system. The longer and harder you pull it back, the more damage it does. This talks about different festivals, culture, education, spirits, things of that nature, science, um, the science that exists in this world, the time. Talks about the base 12 system, While some explicit records were kept, especially in the Abazang and Ezcan Empire, it was centuries after the Awi, which is the destruction of the world, before accurate record keeping came along. That had much to do with the two-spirit mathematician in the Dene Republic. Their relations regarding the number 12 changed everything, including how everyone in the world eventually tracked time. Time is tracked in years, starting from the Awi at year zero. Each year is broken into 12 months. Different nations have designated different names for these months, but they're often named after important spirits, animals, or, excuse me, ceremonies. That moved too fast. The first 7 months have 30 days in them. The last 5 months have 31. Each day is made up of 12 segments, what we might call hours. Each hour is broken down further into 12 segments and so on. So I have not done the math on this, but I would like someone to do a comparison. Like, uh, if each day is made up in 12 segments, what we might call hours, what would our current time frame consider that? So, for example, instead of 24 hours in a day is 12 hours, that means in this world, 1 hour is 2 hours in our world. And then if each hour is broken down further into 12 segments, and their hour is 2 hours, and that's broken into 12 segments, how long is that? So I would just wonder if anybody knows would do that. Okay, so we talk about culture, art, music, which is very important. Um, I mentioned about a world of what is it? Post scarcity world. So what threats can happen to a post scarce world? In if if wealth isn't important, what can you threaten? And that's where you can threaten like culture, art, science, people's rights, things like that. So comedy is very fun, very important to this culture. Poetry, theater, live sports is also important as well. Um, they talk about how sporting events can be used to judge a violent conflict rather than going to war. Games and leisure are very important and your ability to do them. And and like I said, 60 we're like 62, 63 pages in, and we're still talking about reconsidering um, culture, like unlearning a thing and learning a thing. The other yesterday we talked about the Aztecs and the Two Spirit and sexuality and gender, and this describes what that is. Talks about medicine and health, science, medicine. There is no distinction in medicine between science, magic, psychological help, things like that. So families are expected to help people recover, while science is used to help them recover, while the spirits help them recover. Comedy is it even included in the recovery method. It talks about gender and gender roles, two spirit, marriage and family, here's another throwback to the OSR where players are not expected, but you engaging in romantic relationships is a commonality and can be part of the character growth, and even old age, retirement, death, and how long people live, tribes, whatnot. The reason why I'm paging through as well, not just going to chapters, if you'll notice off on the side that the chapters um, are they're pretty broad. So, and then we'll get into character creation and the D12 system, and then we'll get towards the end here. See what you guys have to say. Streaming from the porch with a fine, gentle rain and the birds in the background. No, no, no. Just I wish I did. I just put some music in the background, and the music is undefined. It is just nature itself. Yeah, I love that. Written in the fine print. Ritual combat must wait 7 to 10 business days for approval. Right? Oh man, yeah. Mm-mm-mm. So an hour is now 120 minutes, and a minute is now 120 seconds. Yep. It seems to apply a slower pace of life than our current world. I would say that, yes. I would say that time is a bit informal and an accepted informality of time schedules. So time, I feel like things are supposed to happen when they happen. So an event may be scheduled, but people kind of generally arrive rather than this will happen at this specific time and place. It's an acceptance of things happen when they're supposed to happen. Even with when it comes to science and technology, which might be strange for some people, but on the other hand, this is a world where spirituality is embraced, and they don't have a problem with that. And so if you arrive someplace early, then you have time to relax or meditate or have a conversation or, smoke a little something. Whereas if you arrive so-called late, then, it was ordained that when the last people arrive, that's when we start our conversation or building this you know, community or something like that. So creating a character. This game uses a uh, I'm calling it a 9 brick. It's unofficial. This is not part of the game, but it uses a 9 brick system, and I'm calling it a 9 brick because you have 3 stats organized in 3 categories. So it's much like a Rubik's cube. They go 3 across and 3 down. Um, So you have your physical stats, your mental stats, your emotional, spiritual statistics. And then you have 3 of them in that: 3 physical, 3 mental, 3 spiritual. And all 3 can be threatened in the game. And it is you roll D12. And so there are 2 categories to adjust success and failure. Normally, you get your D12 pool, so you get your as many point as many dice in your statistics, as many dice in your skills. You roll that. You want to roll 8 or more, and then you can adjust the difficulty of 8 up or down, moving it down to 7 or even 6 if it's easy, moving up to 9, 10, or 11 if it's more difficult. Some outside elements can make things more difficult, moving that difficulty number of number 8, and then how many dice you roll, and then of course successes. Right, when you use a weapon, there's a base damage plus you add your successes, things like that. So dice pool, D12 dice pool system. Here they're talking about what kind of role you have in the party, whether you're a warrior. Right here, like sticking here to the left, going from left to right. Warriors, scouts, healer, tinkerer. That's basically your role. It's a skill based game, so you could be a warrior with some high tech skill, or a scout with combat skills, or a healer with some defensive abilities, or really good with a weapon or something. So you can create that. There's even a seeker. Seekers are like philosophers, sociologists, spiritualists, things like that. Uh, Oracles, and for a little bit of niche protection, like if you're a warrior, warriors focus on strength and receive a +1 to strength during character creation. So as you pick different parts of your character, you will start building your character so that your choices add to your character's capability. So you get points and benefits based on the things you pick. Um, the point It's a point buy system, and although it may seem a little complicated, it's pretty easy. So a point buy system, whenever you increase your stats for your statistics or your skills, you pay for the points equal to the number that you're gaining. So if you want a 4 in a stat, um, you know, it costs 1 point for 1, it costs another 2 points for a 2, costs another 3 points for a 3, and costs 4 points for a 4. So you add all those together. So it costs 1 point, then 3 points, then 6 points, then 10 points. I hope I explained that correctly. Um, there are also somewhat factions for characters. So for your special super capabilities, you do have a path, and you can follow a path. And so while as a mixed party group of people you work together, you also might follow a path and a faction, like path of the eagle, bison, beaver, coyote, fox, owl, badger, deer, spider, falcon, snake, crow, salmon, bear, and raccoon. And then, of course, there's a related stat to that, and there's a secondary related stat. And so, for example, let's go with eagle. Your primary related stat to the eagle is strength. Your secondary one is called wisdom. For down at the bottom for raccoon, you probably can't see raccoon. Let's go with fox. So with fox, agility is a primary stat and also spirit. And so if you have a certain path, those paths have certain, they're like feats, right? Some of it is not quite magical. Other capabilities are very magical. So for example, for fox, maybe you get a bonus on your speed, and you can explain that maybe you're just a fast person, or maybe a fox spirit actually inhabits your body and you like have like thin fur on you or whatever. You can explain it any way you want to. And then also spirits, maybe spirits are attuned to you, so it's like a storytelling element as well. And then here's some of the symbology down here, of the different paths, and you can get pulled in different directions. So maybe Path of the Crow sends you on a mission that might be counter to your group's party. Think of it like a warlock patron in Dungeons and Dragons. It could be something like that, except they don't necessarily have to be spiritual. It could just be immortal. Like, hey, you're part of a crow. You're part of the crow like the rest of us. You need to find out put this spirit to rest out there in the wilderness, because the I don't know, something harmful happened and the evil spirits are affecting the people out there. We're going to send you on a mission, and but don't tell anybody because it'll create a panic or something. So this is about character creation. Goes through various things. Here we go. Yeah, a little bit of like Wakanda. What's the movie with Will Smith and his son? After Earth. It's a little bit like that in the aesthetic as well. Talks about family, spirit world, allies and opponents, spirit world connection, animal connections, financial responsibilities and connections. There's drawbacks like secrets, blessings, curses, addictions. Notoriety can be a double-edged sword as well. Your other companions and maybe animal companions, and then your stats. And here is the 9 brick that I'm talking about, where you have physical, mental, and a spiritual setup, and then you have your power, finesse, and reserve. And and yeah, so you can create adventures that challenge someone physically, maybe like exploration, combat. You can challenge someone mentally, like trying to figure out how to solve a problem, like a flood or a famine or a disease, or um, how to get the most resources to the people without using industrialization. And then, of course, there's a spiritual connection to that: fear, anxiety, evil spirits, blah 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 blah. Mm-mm. I'm going to fast forward here a bit. Sorry about that. Here are many of the skills. For example, like athletics. I'll explain why there's 2 stats here. I want to get to some of your comments first, and then we get to this. I follow the path of sloth. Yeah. Ian Wright says, without industry or international trade, need for precise time is less. And also there is how to explain this? Um, Culturally, there's an acceptance of the natural world. So if there isn't enough food or shelter, or the environment has a shift that causes harm to the people, it's not like they're blaming it on industrialization. It it's a natural fact of the world. And so maybe this is harsh to say this, but the people find it all right. There's an acceptance of starvation, disease, homelessness, moving families when they don't want to. There's an embracing of that hardship. So it's less about I'm not going to move. You need to make the world shift around me. It's more like we as a community should have expected this, and it's our responsibility to deal with the hardship that's presented in front of us. So yeah, the player characters might go, it might be easier to make a big farm and to cultivate things. Instead they're like, you know what, we need to move like 5,000 people to that other ridge, and it's our responsibility to make sure it's done safely and smoothly and easily, rather than sitting here and building a big giant building to protect everybody, right? um but yeah, you're absolutely right with that, Ian. Rollstat says so. Opposition is more about differing ideologies, needs, or social pressures rather than combat prowess. Maybe players will start to think outside of stab it, move on. Yeah, exactly. Like there may be a need. Okay, so what if you have one resource but two different groups need to use it? What do you do then? Right? That becomes the problem. Um, hey, you go hunting on somebody else's land, and they're like, "That's our land," but the culture says, "Well, the land doesn't belong to you," and well, that becomes an issue. We're hunting in the same place. Our people need that food too. So what do we do? Right? Drew does mention, I like this. Drew says, I like the setting, but I wonder what character arcs are the players supposed to play. Um, the it comes across, it's about playing into type, out of type, I would say, with character arcs. So for example, a warrior might be tested on their capability to be a warrior, and challenging their warrior capabilities. Hey, can I fight better? Can I move faster? Am I stronger? Am I more enduring? Can I hunt? On the opposite end of that, it is if I solve every problem like a warrior, maybe I'm being challenged to not kill first and ask questions later. So it's like, do you play into type and challenge that way? Do you play out of type and challenge that way? Yep. Humans are not separated from the natural patterns of the world. Well, we try to fight it. All right, so one strange but cool detail is that skills in this game have two related stats. So an investigator, if you have the investigation skill, um, you could use perception or wisdom for that skill. So there is like a secondary skill that means like, oh, maybe you have been trained in perception because of your investigation skill, or maybe you're just natural at it. Also, if you are not trained in the skill, when you roll the dice, you pick the lesser of the two stats if you are not trained in it. So if you're not a good cook and you are trying to cook something, what's lower, your spirit or intelligence? And you are not trained in it, you pick the lesser of the two. So that's how untrained and trained goes in. So if you are trained in it, you get to pick the best. If you are not trained in it, you pick the worst. So that's pretty simple. It's pretty cool too as well, right? Like some skills, people, you can see that some people might be like well trained in it. Other people might just be very skilled. Like for example, here we have unarmed combat, and we know that if you've ever taken up like martial arts or wrestling or something like that, strength has a lot to do with martial arts and unarmed combat, but so does intelligence. So I like the idea that there's like two stats for each skill, and also narratively you can describe it a certain way. I want to get to the special capabilities before we get too far along. These are the skills. Sorry if you're visually getting disrupted here. Close your eyes if it's like too much. Survival skills. It doesn't have a breakdown. Unfortunately, it doesn't have. I didn't page mark anything. Here we go. Okay, Chapter 9, ability name and related stats. So Let me. I'm gonna do a one pager on this, and then increase the size. These are the capabilities given to the players from the Adenante, and you get to pick them. And they are categorized by your stat, and then they're given these really cool names like Power of the Bear, going from top to bottom. Power of the Bear, Skin of the Armadillo, Warrior's Fire, uh, Cougar's Grace, Arrow's Wish, Chameleon's Shine, Gecko's Heart, River's Flow, Winter's Rest. And so you can describe these at any combination you wish, whether natural ability, an Adenante skill, kind of like the purple, the purple heart shaped herb from Wakanda and Black Panther. Think of Black Panther if you want to think of some of these capabilities. Whether these could be cybernetic modifications, these could be spiritual ancestors enhancing you, or anything. It could be a natural animal totem enhancing you. All the above, or any percentages thereof, could be part of this. And it just tells you some of the capabilities. Like, what's something simple? Eagles, intelligence, eagle's sight. Substitute intelligence for other stats with mind. Or wasp's sting. Make mental attacks with intelligence and a spirit check. So, right here, because there are physical stats, mental stats, and spiritual stats, you can, with the wasp sting, instead of using your physical attributes, you just use your mental. You can make a mental attack with intelligence. Stone thoughts, increase resistance to mental effects and intelligence, and a will check. Right. So, are there psychic abilities? Yes, and they just run. It's a dice pool system, so it runs parallel to everything else. So, yep. Wolverine. It will. Wolverine's resolve, regenerate soul during an encounter. Shame it doesn't say regenerate body, but whatever. Um, Owl's Watch. Mind you, you can mix and match these, although based on the path you choose, it's cheaper to buy it, but you can mix and match them as well. And then there's like some of the capabilities here. Strength abilities. Power of the Bear. Secondary action, 1 point of soul. And then there's a dice check as well. And then your character can temporarily increase their strength. To activate, the character spends a secondary action, primary and secondary actions, like a bonus action basically. 1 point of soul, and make a will check. For each success, the character's strength increases by 1. Pretty simple stuff, right? And it's kind of funny because look at the raccoons. Like, we going for a ride, I guess, or dude, I hid my food up in there. What are you doing? But yeah. All right, let's go back to a 2 pager. So those are, and of course, there's many pages of these. Like I said, like feats. They're very much like feats, or like abilities you can buy. Less magical, more like a blessing, or an enhancement, or a like being touched or tainted by other things. And also story wise, like if they're, the game is called Coyote and Crow. So if you're enhanced by the coyote, maybe the crow doesn't trust you. And so those individuals that have crow-like abilities might have a particular opinion about you, simply because you have been gifted with the ability from a different totem animal. So there's a bunch of those. There's a lot of them. I'm not going to page through all that. And then go to rules of the game, and then the story guide. Let's see what you guys have to say. Sorry. Ian mentions, with the Ice Age ending, are there people from other continents coming now? Well, from what I understand, the answer to that question is no. And simply because the creators would rather embrace other First Nations first before thinking about other continents. There is a section that talks about the other continents. So because it is a high-tech world, they do know, like, Asia, Europe, it still exists. Central South America does exist. They know those places exist, but it's coming out of an ice age, and so think of it like what's the other game? The Genesis is Mediterranean, Central European, North African centered. This game is an uncolonized First Nation game. So while they exist, it's not really about that. Nameless Spook says, I'm thinking this setting favors more of a Monster of the Week format over a long epic campaign. I'm a bit with you on that. I would say that, especially if you want to run like character specific games centered where one character deals with their family, another character deals with a personal mission, another character deals with an ancestor sending them on a quest. Like I could see something like that. I'm not familiar. I didn't read anything about tobacco. Was tobacco brought here or did it exist here first? I'm thinking tobacco was brought over. Rollstat says this game seems to prioritize world building over plot hooks. I think I prefer plot hooks that allow you and your players to build the world. No moral imperative in a post scarcity world. The only I would only challenge that in a monster of the week thing, meaning like you might come across a warring faction that wants to kind of bring down your utopic world, but I don't think it would be like a major empire that will, um I mean, could you create Klingons in this world? Like a Klingonic Klingonic. Yeah, could you create a Klingonic organized anti-Cohecan tribe that is so big that is a constant threat? I guess you could. I think you could. Um, but then it would bring in the question like, do the players want to leave their world? Do like their city? Do they want to go out of that city? I don't know. I think it's open world enough, like Cyberpunk or Shadowrun, that it's open enough that you could pick a region and go for it. Like if your players are like, dude, we want to leave and explore the wilderness, then I would make the game based around that. And you know what I mean? Like Star Trek, there are some Star Trek, there are some Star Trek are based around a space habitat and a wormhole. Other Star Trek is we are lost out in space and we got to get home. Other Star Trek is about dealing with the ins and outs of the Federation, right? And I would do the same thing with this. Find out what the players want, and mix and match it to figure out what they want. Do you want to do an internalized story about fitting into this world and being challenged, coming of age stories and whatnot, or do you want to explore externally, like fighting monsters and things like that? Um, this is how the game is done. So, like, 12s explode, ones are failures, um, et cetera, et cetera. And it just talks about the D12 dice pool system. And it goes into like, well, here's what happens when see people roll that, et cetera, et cetera. And some things require more successes than others. Dice pool system, et cetera, et cetera. The rules of the game and how to do things. Hacking, invention, stealth. Of course, here's a final rule: bigots and racists are not allowed to play Coyote and Crow. That is a rule in the game. So don't challenge that. Yeah. And then how to play encounters and narrative play overview. It is a narrative based system. So, like, when you have multiple successes, what does that look like? So, if you're trying, let me go to an example I use far too often about picking a lock, right? So, you need 3 successes to successfully pick the lock. If you only get 1 success, what happens? Does it mean it takes you longer? Do you drop your lock picking tools? Does something click on the other side, making it more difficult? Do the guards come back around because they heard something? Uh, Whatever. Did you activate an alarm? Did you start a countdown timer? Blah, blah, blah. Talks about defining an encounter initiative, how to play the game. Let me move lastly to for the story guide, and this is the section for the story guide and how to tell some stories. Stat damage, um, and then this gives you some examples and ideas of telling stories and how to do it. Session, narrative play, encounter, story, sagas, setting, theme, tone, and sessions. Some basic stuff. Narrative play, coming up with, and basically coming up with like um, being as enthusiastic about your failures as your successes. Making a conversation. We've seen that before. You see if I can find some examples of through the getting started part. There we go. All the unspoken parts: setting, theme, tone, and this is where I feel like the game can benefit from a group portion by getting your setting, theme, and tone set up. Like how, like do you want this to be like fun and enjoyable, colorful, with very little or few stakes, or do you want it to be a little darker? Maybe the population doesn't see it, but the players get to see the dark side of things. Um, that kind of stuff. Like how cyberpunk do you want to make it? Like how less solar punk and more cyberpunk do you want it? And yeah, yeah. And then here's forging your saga. The like I said before, the main characters are called Suyata, and their what their responsibilities are to a council, um, things that you get, and then it talks about like a kit, themes, tone, protection stories, espionage, exploration stories. Mm-mm-mm. War, horror theme stories. And again, of course, these can be mixed and matched, right? Like here's some bison and there's something with a skull and a like a rat's tail or something in the background. So there's some horror stories and and the three path concept. Mm-mm, mm-mm. Come on. There we go. And then let me get to the towards the end of the book. Interpreting the rules, icons and legends. These are some important individuals, NPCs, and then some NPCs to give some flavor to the world and basically use them to fill the world. Because maybe we might not be familiar with creating like NPCs. Like, what would their names be? Like, what would their purposes be? And so there's a lot of those NPCs, and then we get the things like here we go. Let me put this up here, this spider. Volstat says Star Trek approaches conflict by shifting the focus from material struggles to ideological, political, and ethical dilemmas. Hard to do that with no antagonist. Yeah, if the game had an antagonist faction, an outsider, and usurper, interlopers, it would be phenomenal. Yes, and um, let me how do I describe this? Um, the game isn't focused like that, so it's an open world, much like Dungeons and Dragons doesn't have a specific enemy. This game is the same way, so we get to pick who that is, right? So in Dungeons and Dragons, as an example, it's the most popular thing, right? We can pick a vampire lord or a dragon or goblinoid armies and evil spirits, fiends, and things like that. We have all of that at our disposal, and then we as storytellers focus it, like funnel it down to, well, in my world, there is a vampire lord that is doing this thing in the northern region, and then we're going to tell that story. This game is the same way. So using like some of the antagonists at the back of the book, you could say, hey, this person or being or group of individuals or whatever is the main thrust of this three-part story we're going to tell. And like um like the okay, let me stay right here. So the Locotomig are earth spiders, and they are invading our city, and the player characters are like, oh, it's like killing rats in a basement. Okay, no big deal. But then we find out not only are they bigger and more destructive than they are, maybe there's an outside source causing this. So then we go into part two. Who in the world will want to have these giant earth spiders devastate our city? Now, mind you, a one shot could be let's go underground and kill some spiders. A larger story could be those spiders could have overrun the city. So the players are fighting on the top of buildings, they're fighting underground, they're stopping them in the streets. We're saving people who are trapped because the spiders have attacked them. We're rescuing our citizens that are captured by these spiders. We still have to get important goods like food and nourishment and supplies from one side of the city to the other, and these spiders are in our way. We have to escape this. Like, you could do that over a number of periods of time, but maybe in the background there's someone who's like, yeah, and at some point I'm going to take over the city and they're going to go under my rule. Stupid egalitarian free peoples, stupid, I'm going to stop them from doing that thing. And so you could make it a bigger story or a smaller story or whatnot. um, so that's how I would do it. So much like fantasy and in science fiction, we can have like a big overriding world, and then we tell the story that we want to, you know. um, Here's some enemies here. We go Milo, green fingers, Mazazug. And these a lot of these like icons and legends can be as important or as minor as you want. um Natsu Nabaa, I know I butchered that. The sleep doctor, like, is could that be a main character, big baddie, or is it like one of a number of agents, or something thrown in there as a one shot because you want to do something else? It's all that stuff, all that combined, right? Now, mind you, some people might say, well, if this is an entirely high tech scientific world, where are all these evil spirits coming from? And the idea is like, no, it's kind of mixed. It's all mixed together, right? It's not one or the other. It's everything. So, yeah, large turtle. Ooh, don't get stomped there, buddy. Don't get stomped. Mm-mm-mm. Wards, spirit folk. And again, these are here to fill out the world, locations, NPCs, monsters, things of that nature. And the players might have to bargain with some of these um, spiritual things, like what do they want, what do they need. Of course, there's an adventure at the back of the book. What could appease these dangerous monsters or creatures or spirits, at least temporarily. Um, before we have to go out and murder kill all of them. Encounter at Station 54 is an adventure, and then there's some sample characters here for perusal, and like for example, A10 is a scout, follows the path of the fox. Their motivation is control. Motivation is kind of like alignment, not as hard coded. It just gives you an idea of like what kind of character you have. There's a little bit of background. Here's the 9 brick stats: strength, agility. I think it's endurance, intelligence, perception, wisdom, spirit, charisma, and will. And then there's some derived stats: physical defense, mental defense, spiritual defense, and then body, mind, and soul, like your hit points for those each thing. And there's gifts and burdens, and then skills, total dice pool. So they've already done the math on this character A10. Sorry, I'm going to move back up again. So A10 has an athletics of 7, so grab 7 d12s and roll them up, things like that, and some gifts and burdens. Let me get to comments. Keep missing them. Do 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 do. Drew says, I don't think antagonists are necessary. If you can create compelling internal struggle within the characters, then you are golden. But that is something too few systems teach. I agree. Uh, Powered by the Apocalypse does a really good job of that, especially games like Thirsty Sword Lesbians and others have a like the external story is really it's almost basically simple, if not comedically adolescent, but the internal story is very complicated and intriguing, right? Yeah, Rolsted's agreed. While antagonists, whether they are villains, rivals, or obstacles, aren't necessary, they're a great tool for driving tension and player engagement. And sometimes it's a matter of like, here's a story hook, and oh, by the way, by accident, your character grows, right? Like that can be a thing as well. It is an issue when making a setting without a lot of tropes that I think you have to be a bit clearer on what sort of stories or conflicts you have to guide play. And so yeah, they're in here. And also, um, sorry, sample characters. I think there's a character sheet. Final notes from the design. You can read them from what they were thinking when they did the thing. And these are all the people that helped design the game. Of course, here's the glossary and all the words, the lexicon. You're like, I can't remember what that meant. Oh, man. And then, of course, there's a huge glossary. Oof, 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 oof. And then character sheet. Let's single page this out. And then here's our character sheet. Boom. And then path of background. A lot of the narrative stuff is placed up front. Things like motivation, background, gifts and burdens, short-term and long-term goals. And then we have our stats. Legendary rank is kind of in a skill-based system. It's kind of like level a little bit. Your initiative score, your legendary ranks allows you mechanically, if you have higher legendary ranks, you can use them for more successes. So when you're rolling dice, you can use them for successes because you're more skilled. That's basically it. You've been around the block. Ability, states, and effects, and then of course the long list of skills. Mind you, like if you're writing this down on a piece of paper or notes, you only really need to write down the skills you have. But when you have a skill-based game, having all the skills listed and then what their totals are and any specializations you have, it's always good to have that here. And then, of course, the back end of your sheet with their notes, sketches, stuff like that. So I'm going to go back to the cover of the book. And then have a little discussion, and we're going to get out of here. Yeah. So much like any role-playing game, like the with me using things like Star Trek or Cyberpunk or hell, Dungeons and Dragons or whatever, those games already have a known, I'll say a known play style. I would even include Blades in the Dark in this, and what's another game? Forbidden Lands, exploration game, Forbidden Lands. Torchbearer probably would fit into this category. So it is a indigenous people's alternate timeline, alternate Earth game, and then the kind of stories you want to tell in this game, you would then represent by, if you need to find like something to hold on to, I would do the exact same thing. So for example, if you are someone who likes to have stories about knights and armor and the honor that knights have, but you want to play this game, the main characters, the Soyata, might have goals related to keeping the city safe and the population safe. And so you can tell stories about pulling on their goals, right? So, in internal conflict. Okay, so you have a duty to the land, but you also have your own personal agenda. Which one is it? Or you have a duty to the whole community versus a duty to your path, your faction. You get pulled in two different directions. Same thing with samurai stories, right? So you can tell that story. Or You can go more Blades in the Dark cyberpunk, telling like espionage heist stories where you have to rescue people, steal data, uh, stop someone who is hoarding a thing what do you call it? Information, data, hacking, um, uh, that kind of thing. Whether you are hunting, bounty hunting, going after criminals, maybe you as players, you can go a little darker and say, well, maybe this utopic society isn't as utopic as we think it is, and there's an internal element that's like placating the population, but the players, like, they live, right? The players see something, maybe through ancient spirits or ancestors, or uncovering data, that maybe this isn't all what it seems to be. Now that might break a little bit of the immersion in terms of like, this is a real utopia versus a fake one. But you could do that where the players are the rebels in this world, and the population is like, you need to stop being anarchists. You need to toe the line, and the players themselves are set to go against what is already here, which is like this community or communal system. And mind you, both could be true at the same time. Maybe maybe these interlopers or this utopia that really isn't one, maybe the players could solve it, or this could be something that the players realize, they open their eyes and they go, oh shit, we've been working for the enemy this entire time. Yeah, all that's possible. So yep. I also think like part of it could be our own perceptions of a game, meaning like, just because this game is different doesn't mean it needs to be played different. It's just a different world. We already, I always refer to or reference like, well, what did we do in the past? It's very much like individuals who have a hard time understanding that 2014 fifth edition is different than 2024. And like, how are we supposed to do that, right? And it's like, well, we've done it in the past. The OSR is literally like a hodgepodge of all different white box, red box, uh, AD&D, BX. It's a hodgepodge, but guess what? We've already figured out how to, what do we have? Shadow Dark, Knave, Cairn explaining the OSR. And so we already have a reasoning for that. So yeah, for this game, I would do the same thing. Like, just because it's a different world doesn't mean it's a completely different, throw your hands up. And I'm not blaming you guys. I'm just saying, for people who might be got this far in the video, which I doubt, but got this far and go, well, what am I supposed to do? Well, it's like, well, what would you do in any other game? If you were playing a high seas piracy game, what would you do? Well, just use this in the game, except you're just not a pirate on the high seas. You are the exact same way going out there into the wilderness or something. Yes, that would be awesome. It is a Matrix-style illusion, a Gnostic approach like Cult adopted. You could do that. I think it would, personally, much like people who feel like a utopia can exist, I would personally push against that. Like, I don't see a reason why we humans are so, we human beings today are so disenfranchised that it's difficult for us to imagine playing in a world where there really is a utopia. But I think it's hard for us to embrace the idea that, well, it's a utopia and we don't understand how it exists, because in our own world we're like, there's no way more than 10 people could exist together in a utopic society. Damn, you can't even get two people to agree on pizza toppings, let alone but I would challenge players to go like, and game masters to go, well, if the one ask is, this is a utopia, then what do you do after that? And I would say, well, you are representatives of this world that supposedly shouldn't exist or can't exist, and adventure out from there. Why wouldn't you be committing heists against opposing factions? Why wouldn't you be being a bounty hunter, or slaying dangerous monsters, or appeasing the souls of the undead or whatnot? Why not? Why the hell not? And then of course challenging yourself, right? Challenging yourself from your your courage, your intelligence, your will, things like that. There, see, there we go. Pineapple goes on pizza. If you disagree, then you cannot handle utopia. No, it's made out of pineapple. I mean, people. Which would be, how dark of a utopia would that be? They're feeding all the people because it's made out of people. It can't be made out of people. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for letting me introduce Coyote and Crow as we do a travel log around the world of tabletop role playing games that somewhat embrace the the culture and the ethnicity and the histories of different individuals around the world that I could find and purchased and have to show you because I don't have every game in the world, but it is kind of personal a personal goal of mine to try to find a game from the majority of regions and cultures from around the world, and this just happens to be another one. So, don't know if we're going to go. I would like to go into Canada, but I think I have another game. Maybe we might go into the Caribbean. We'll probably go into the Caribbean tomorrow, um, and then we'll go across the ocean blue into like Europe or the Mediterranean or Africa, maybe the Mediterranean. With the Mediterranean first, maybe then go northern. No, we've got Persia, Alexander the Great, so we can go there. Of course, we've got absolutely got Japan. Legend of Five Rings is probably the most notable. There's other games out there too, and if you guys have some ideas for some, uh, just name some. That it says doubt I'll play it, but I'm picking it up. It's a good pick. A little expensive. There's a. Let me see if I can put this. Go to the home. Boom, boom. Let me copy this. There is a quick start, free quick start. I believe that's still available. Maple syrup doomsday, maybe. Um, but yeah, and again, of course, listen. Every game ain't for everybody. So there is that. Like something could rub you the poutine holocaust. Ooh, yeah, that's so funny. Um, Again, not every game is for everyone, and not every aesthetic is for everyone. High technology mixing with magic is not for everyone. All that kind of great stuff. But yeah. But anyway, hey, and thank you very much for stopping by there, Roll Stats. Cool thing. Cool. We'll have to um, let's hook up and do a panel together. I haven't done those in a while. Interview slash panel, maybe come up with well, instead of doing like an interview, maybe we can come up with a subject and talk about it. Um, the OSR is in full swing now, and you are my go to for BX and Beck me. So maybe we can do like a comparison kind of thing. Well, let's do something like that. We'll get together and do just and connect together, and maybe we'll just do it like pre-recorded because I tend to do off the cuff unscripted, but we can do like an interview panel kind of thing, or maybe our co-host here would have a subject that we maybe be able to talk about or something, maybe something like that. Yeah, cool. All right, let's do that. All right, guys. Yeah, we'll definitely do that, and we'll hook up. So yeah. And I think an OSR, not retrospective, but like a retro future of the OSR probably would be a good subject to do. Um, like how much Shadow Dark and ICRPG, Nave and Karen have kind of like captured people's attention. What is it? Heck, even Crown and Skull kind of fits into that category, I think, as well. Um, so yeah, we'll hook up with that, and we'll do like an interview thing that way. So anyway, guys, have a great one. Brought you here too long, guys. I will see thee later. Peace and tranquility.